I feel like in our society, so many men seem to feel like if they're not a part of the problem, that means they're part of the solution. If they're not one of the bad ones, that means they're one of the good ones. And this false dichotomy that they try to represent reminds me very much of the analogy that Beverly Danielle Tatum used in her book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together? Now, the analogy she used in that book was one for racism and white supremacy in society, but it can quite as easily be applied to patriarchy and misogyny. So, in this analogy, you're on one of those airport moving sidewalks, where it's a conveyor belt and you can just stand there and it'll move you forward. So, that conveyor belt is society. Now, some people on that conveyor belt run actively in the direction that that conveyor belt is going, which is bigotry in her example, or in our example, it's misogyny and the patriarchy. Other people, they're not actively doing anything to promote misogyny and patriarchy, at least in their own minds, but they're still standing on the conveyor belt and they're still being moved towards it by society as society moves towards it. So even though they're not actively promoting those things, they're still actively participating and engaging in the society that does. Then there are other people who don't like what they see ahead. So they turn their back and they stand with their back turned to it. But even though their back's turned, they're still as just as much actively promoting and participating in that conveyor belt towards patriarchy and misogyny as the people who are facing forward. And then there are the people who don't like what they see ahead. They don't like the direction society is going. And so they turn around and they start running in the opposite direction from society, from misogyny, from patriarchy, from bigotry in the original example. And those are the only people who are actually, at least in some cases, not actively contributing towards the misogyny, the patriarchy, the bigotry, whatever example we're applying this to, because they are doing whatever they can. They are aware that doing nothing is nonetheless participation. And so they are instead becoming active against the system to try to push back and negate their participation in the system and try to bring the whole system towards a halt. That is why I so frequently on this channel say silence is violence, inaction is violence. When violence is being applied and you are silent or inactive, that is violence. It applies to racism and white supremacy. It applies to misogyny and patriarchy. It applies to a lot of different things. It's the same dynamic. Just because you do nothing does not make you one of the good ones. It does not make you benevolent. It does not relieve you of the responsibility for your participation in a system that is inherently harmful.